The air in the office was thick with the scent of old paper and secrets, a smell that seemed to cling to my skin as I crossed the threshold. The blinds were half drawn, allowing fingers of muted light to flicker across the cluttered desk where James often worked late into the night. I had come to embrace this small room, once believing it part of our shared dreams. Yet, today it felt more like an altar of deceit. As I approached the desk, my heart raced with an unsettling mixture of dread and determination. My hands trembled slightly as I brushed past scattered papers and opened the drawers that held decades of our life together. A life built on the fragile foundation of trust, now starting to crumble under the weight of hidden truths. I had promised to support James, to be his partner in every sense, but the price of that devotion had always felt just out of reach, like a dream fading with the dawn. Then I caught sight of it, a folded document sticking out from beneath his laptop, its edges slightly frayed, like it had been hurriedly tucked away. My pulse quickened as I reached for it, a strange sense of foreboding building within me. I glanced around, half expecting someone to catch me invading his personal space. The office was empty, a comforting silence wrapped around me, isolating me in my thoughts. I pulled the document free and, under the harsh glow of the overhead light, spread it open. My heart sank. What lay before me was nothing short of a meticulously detailed plan, a chilling outline of how James intended to siphon our wealth into his own accounts. Every careful word was a dagger, piercing through the fabric of the life we had woven together. It was as if my whole existence teetered on the edge of that paper. Disbelief washed over me, quickly morphing into a deep, visceral anger. How could he? Tears stung the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away, refusing to let him witness my heartbreak. He thought he could dismiss me forever, but he underestimated the woman who had always been behind the mask. I murmured. The words steadied me like a mantra. The realization struck me with the force of a tidal wave. I had signed my own financial autonomy away, trusting that our love would safeguard my heart against betrayal. A burst of vivid memories flashed before me, sleepless nights cradling our children while he pursued yet another promotion, sacrifices I made to mold our lives to fit his ambitions. I remembered the way he'd brush off my dreams, the way his patronizing smiles dimmed my light until I barely recognized myself in the mirror. "You've always been the supportive wife, Claire," he'd say, as if that title was sufficient currency to bind my worth. The cold sting of his dismissive remarks echoed in my mind, and I was engulfed by the realization that my quiet devotion had rendered me invisible. These thoughts twisted like barbed wire around my heart as I sought to understand how I had missed the signs, how I had let his cruelty masquerade as love all these years. I was not just a partner, but a pawn in a game I had never agreed to play. I let the document slip from my fingers, and it landed with a quiet thud against the desk, a muted proclamation of my betrayal. My skin prickled as I stood there, shocked by the starkness of the truth. Rage simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over, but I knew that acting impulsively wouldn't serve me. I needed to remain calm, collected. Strategy was essential now. As I caught my breath and tried to steady the tremors coursing through me, the once welcoming office transformed into a stark reminder of my entrapment. The silence became deafening, amplifying the conflict in my mind. I began to think of all that James had taken from me, my financial independence, my career goals, my sanity. And the more I thought, the heavier the burden of deception grew. He believed he could undermine me, pull me apart piece by piece, without ever looking back. But he was wrong. Today was not the end. It was a beginning. Armed with the truth, I felt a flicker of fire ignite within me, a quiet strength that had remained dormant for far too long. I had sacrificed too much to let him tear apart what we had built without consequences. With a deep breath, I slid the damaging document into my bag, a small, almost imperceptible action that felt monumental in its significance. I turned on my heel and stepped away from the desk, back into the world that still held pretense and normalcy. The warmth from the afternoon sun filtered into the hallway, reminding me that light still existed beyond the cramped walls of James's deceit. As I walked away, each step echoed a sense of resolve deep within me. I would no longer remain the woman hidden behind the mask of a supportive wife. I would emerge, not just as Claire Bennett, but as someone who would confront the truth. The battle was just beginning, and I wouldn't retreat again. The cold guest room felt foreign, a far cry from the warmth of the master bedroom that had once cradled our dreams. It was as if the walls closed in around me, suffocating any remnants of hope. I stood there, staring at the untouched bed, the sheets fresh but unwelcoming. As I sank down onto the edge, it dawned on me. This was my exile. The irony of it gnawed at me. I was physically present in a home that felt increasingly like a prison. The memories flooded in, uninvited yet familiar. I closed my eyes as scenes of my past replayed like a film I could no longer edit. I remembered the nights I lay awake listening to James's murmurs of ambition, always aiming higher while I tucked the kids in and set aside my own aspirations. The echo of their laughter filled the air, a sound so innocent yet tethered to my own sacrifices. "Mommy, do you love us?" my daughter had asked one night, her wide eyes reflecting the moonlight. I had smiled, brushing her hair away from her forehead. "Of course, sweetie. You are my world." But deep down, I often wondered if I wasn't losing pieces of myself with each passing day, each dismissive remark by James making me feel less significant. As I recalled the countless dinners where I listened to him boast about his triumphs, my heart twisted with indignation. "You're always so supportive, Claire," he'd say, leaning back in his chair, the condescension dripping from his words. I'd nodded silently, the facade of a dutiful wife wearing thin. It was as if my presence had become a mere accessory to his success. The memory of Melanie, my sister-in-law, crept in, a once trusted ally now complicit in James's schemes. I recalled her words during family gatherings, how she'd always side with him, dismissing my feelings with a laugh. "Oh, Claire, you're being too emotional. It's just how he is," she'd say, a smirk on her lips. If only she knew how her brother's indifference had chipped away at my spirit. But loyalty to family, especially his, came before honesty, didn't it? That thought lingered uncomfortably, a betrayal by blood. The cold reality of my current situation yanked me back to the present. I felt like a ghost in my own life, the corners of this house now dampened with despair. Here I was, ruminating on past sacrifices while my husband plotted behind my back, weaving a web of deceit that threatened to ensnare everything I had patiently built alongside him. The bitterness of it seeped into my bones. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Looking around the guest room, I noticed remnants of our shared life, pictures pinned to the walls that showcased our travels and celebrations. But now they felt like mockeries of a happiness I no longer recognized. In those smiling snapshots, I could see the woman I had been, full of dreams, ready to take on the world alongside her partner. Where had she gone? The weight of my sacrifice loomed large. I had given up my career to support James's ambitions to create a home for our children, believing that partnership was a two-way street. Yet here I was, his plans cradled in my bag, handcuffed by a relationship that should have flourished with mutual respect. I had become invisible, defined by his needs and ambitions, each choice I made underlined by a desire to keep the peace. With resolve building like an unquenchable fire, I closed my eyes again, envisioning a life where I didn't have to compromise my identity for his. My independence was not just a distant memory, it was a possibility waiting to be reclaimed. The quiet of the guest room turned into a reminder that I needed to fight for that chance, to rekindle the dreams I had hidden away. I propelled myself off the bed, the weight of my past no longer anchoring me down. I'd spent far too long allowing James's cruelty to dictate the course of my life. The thought crystallized into a single truth. I had the power to change my narrative, to rise from the ashes of complacency. As I stepped out of the guest room, I resolved to confront the ghosts of my past with the grace they didn't deserve. James might have thought I was broken beyond repair, that I would simply acquiesce to his domination without argument. But each step I took down the hallway was a reminder that strength was often birthed from pain. The journey wouldn't be easy, and the path may indeed lead through turbulent waters. But for the first time in a long while, I felt emboldened. I glanced back at my life, my children, my sanity, and the remnants of love that felt like shards scattered across the floor. It was time to gather those pieces, to piece together a strategy that would not just expose James but liberate me from the chains that had held me captive for years. With every ounce of my being, I was ready to step into the light and reclaim not only my dignity, but my dreams. What he thought would be the end of me was just the beginning. I was done being the invisible woman behind the mask. Claire Bennett was ready to rise. The days that followed felt like a strange interlude, a dance between observation and careful planning. I lived under the same roof as James. Each shared meal and act we performed without words, a veneer of normalcy spread like paint over a rot beneath. I knew I had no choice but to play my part, but within me thrummed a current of quiet resolve. His secrets were no longer safe. With every glance in his direction, I felt my determination solidify. I realized I could turn my pain into power, crafting a way to expose the man who thought he could manipulate me without repercussions. I steeled myself to gather more evidence, to piece together the puzzle of deceit he'd constructed. I began to focus beyond my humiliation. Seeing became my new weapon. Early one afternoon, while he was at an important meeting, one of many that seemed to drag on endlessly, I took refuge in his office again. This time, though, my heart didn't race with fear. It felt like a drum, thrumming with purpose as I surveyed the room. I knew I had to dig deeper. As I rummaged through the drawers of his desk, each item became symbolic of the life I was determined to reclaim. Shoving aside the useless clutter, old pens, receipts, outdated business cards, I zeroed in on a small, beaten leather folder tucked behind a stack of papers. It had an allure to it, a whisper of something important hidden from view. My fingers trembled as I pulled it out, brushing off layers of dust that had settled over it like a shroud. Inside, I found various documents, contracts, bank statements, and financial disclosures that spoke of investments I didn't know existed. My breath caught. Each paper bore the same chilling tone as the initial damning document, the language of financial manipulation woven through the text. Although they were meticulously crafted, they held secrets too heavy to remain hidden. I fanned through them, each page revealing more of James's intent: wired transfers, offshore accounts, plans to sever connections with me. My hands shook, not from fear, but from fury. "He thinks he can do this to me," I whispered, the fire igniting within me once more. "He doesn't know who he's up against." I spent what felt like hours combing through his financial life, uncovering truths buried under layers of deception. My heart raced as I began to document everything: details, dates, amounts. It was then that I remembered my discreet meetings with the lawyer years earlier, when I had clung to my fading sense of self-worth. "I would not be counted as a statistic," she had said, urging me to collect information for my own protection. I recalled those words often now. I was no longer merely a victim. I was taking charge. The echoes of those past conversations buoyed my spirit. I had been fortified by heartache, sharpened by betrayal. I noted how James's spending habits painted a clearer picture of his intentions, revealing large sums directed toward accounts with names I didn't recognize, names that held no significance in our lives. As I traced the threads of deceit back to each revelation, particulars crystallized into focus. Anxiety once tangled with my ambition. Now, however, that anxiety transformed into action. I felt like a detective unraveling a mystery, piecing together clues without drawing attention to my growing awareness. Surveillance of James became second nature. I adapted to navigating his world while distancing myself emotionally from it. As the days turned into weeks, I systematically gathered not just documents but intentions. I began recording his late-night phone calls, a simple act of placing my phone in the adjacent room, allowing me to eavesdrop under the guise of being preoccupied. I heard him reassure someone, a tone slick and manipulative, words designed to cut me out of the equation completely. I shivered, although it was not from fear. The cold-blooded cruelty underscored by those whisperings only pushed me to fortify my resolve further. One evening, as he strolled in with a triumphant air, I tucked the folder safely away. Nothing would betray the newfound conviction radiating from me. I feigned an interest in his day while my mind whirled. "You remember that time we talked about getting those new financial investments?" I casually tossed into the conversation, gauging his reaction. His eyes flickered with suspicion before he chuckled, attributing it to my lack of interest in such matters, no doubt believing I was still the passive wife he could manipulate. But as he rattled off his pretended plans, I listened closely, fighting the urge to expose my newly gained knowledge. Each laugh he shared felt like nails in a coffin, sealing away what we once had. I felt the distance between us expand, no longer a chasm of love lost, but rather a vast terrain of understanding, the kind forged through betrayal. No matter how hard he tried to weave his web, I had the power to dismantle it. I cradled the evidence securely as I navigated our days together, feeling as if I was preparing for a symphony. The crescendo would come, and when it did, I would be ready, not as the woman who had been overshadowed, but as Claire Bennett, a force to be reckoned with. What he thought would remain hidden would be unveiled, peeling away the layers of deceit so painstakingly crafted. I could see my future unfolding, one not defined by his plans but by my own making. The secrets were my armor, and with each passing day, I became more prepared for the battle ahead. As the weeks progressed, my life with James became a delicate dance, an act of careful observation hidden beneath the facade of a devoted wife. Each day, I maneuvered through our routine with acute awareness, studying his movements for signs, subtle slip-ups that might allow me a peek into his hidden world. While he reveled in his deceit, I nurtured my resolve, preparing myself for what he believed was an easy victory. The phone calls I recorded, mere whispers that floated through the walls, became my source of strength, words dripping with arrogance and confidence, aimed at erasing me from the equation entirely. "You don't need to worry about her," he'd say, laughter punctuating the cold assurance. But those cruel remarks fueled my fire, igniting a powerful resolve within me. One fateful afternoon, I felt it was finally time to reach out for help. I contacted Susan, an old friend from college who had carved a path in the world of finance. I hadn't leaned on her in years, but desperation emerged like a long-lost companion. I dialed her number, my heart racing as I sought to reconnect. Her voice filled the line, vibrant and warm. "Claire, it's been so long. How are you?" It was surreal how quickly the years melted away, and as we exchanged pleasantries, I felt a dawning determination to confront my past. "I need your expertise," I confessed, my voice steady but urgent. "Something is off with James's finances. I think he's hiding something significant." When we finally met at a cozy cafe, the atmosphere buzzed with energy, but the weight of my revelations made the air thick. I lowered my voice, focused solely on her. "He's involved in shady financial dealings, Susan. I've been gathering evidence." As I divulged my findings, the folders of documents, the bank statements glazed with deception, her brows knitted together in concern. "This is serious, Claire. Are you sure about this?" Her caution pierced through my determination. Taking a breath, I laid everything on the table, my heart pounding with each revelation. Susan listened carefully, a look of fierce focus illuminating her features. "You need to collect everything you can. Don't confront him just yet. You need a solid case to protect yourself first." A sense of relief washed over me, her support washing away the embers of isolation. We spent hours meticulously scouring through numbers and connections, Susan guiding me with her insights as I absorbed the intricacies of James's financial landscape. "This transfer here doesn't add up," she said, her finger tracing a line on the document. "You should find out where this money went. It could be crucial." The adrenaline surged through my veins, igniting my sense of urgency as pieces of the puzzle fell into place. I felt transformed. Each finding reaffirmed my resolve and deepened my hunger for justice. I had once been muted under James's control, but now I was awakening, rebuilding my sense of self one detail at a time. We wrapped up the meeting under the cafe's dim lights. Susan's words etched into my mind. "Stay low, Claire. Don't let him know what you're doing. Your safety is paramount." I nodded, realizing the path ahead would require meticulous strategy. As I left the cafe, I clutched my bag tightly, the weight of those documents becoming a banner of my resilience. Knowledge had become my greatest weapon against the betrayal I had endured for too long. I could feel the walls of James's deceit starting to tremble. Days turned into little battles, and I became adept at navigating our home with newfound intention. I analyzed every conversation, dissecting James's words for hints of manipulation, and slights that had once felt insurmountable. The expressions he wore, the arrogance, the dismissiveness, became mere notes in my mental ledger. With each day's passing, I layered my knowledge like armor, tying the threads of evidence together in preparation for the fight ahead. I was crafting a narrative woven from shadows and secrets, stepping into a role not just of the wronged wife, but as an orchestrator of my fate. As my investigation progressed, I saw the horizon begin to shift. I wasn't just an innocent bystander, but the protagonist of my story, poised for a showdown. The tide was rising, and I was ready to reclaim my narrative, fueled by a determination that had flickered back to life. James had unwittingly underestimated me, believing my past silence equated to weakness. What I had initially viewed as a devastating betrayal was slowly transforming into a catalyst for empowerment. I would confront not only him but the ghost of the woman I once was, one who was capable of great strength. With newfound hope and formidable resolve, I advanced into the heart of my investigation, holding fast to the belief that Claire Bennett would no longer remain invisible. She would rise, and this silent battle would finally come to light. The days turned to weeks, and with the arrival of spring, I metaphorically shed my old skin. The sun filtered through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, a reminder that it was time I too began to dance to a different tune. My investigation bore fruit, and with each new piece of evidence, a deliberate plan began to form in my mind. It was time to sow the seeds of justice. Guided by Susan's advice, I turned to the legal documents I'd amassed, focusing on how best to wield them. I didn't want a mere reaction. I wanted an orchestration, a symphony of revelations that would stun James into silence. I didn't need to act recklessly. Quietly, I pieced together my strategy, ready to strike when the moment was at its most potent. After organizing my notes, I started drafting a timeline, piecing together James's financial neglect and the many ways he had tried to manipulate me over the years. Each detail felt like a stitching of armor, layering my growing resolve against the chaotic vulnerability that had come to characterize my marriage. I needed to approach this with the precision of a chess player, anticipating his every move. I utilized well-timed inquiries during casual conversations to test the waters. I would ask vague questions about finances or investments, feigning interest in matters I had long relegated to the sidelines. "How's that investment in the offshore account doing?" I would inquire, offering an air of nonchalance while watching his reaction for any hint of unease. James's casual confidence spoke volumes, but it was punctuated by the flicker of guilt that now haunted him each time I pressed him. To fortify my position, I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer, seeking advice on the way forward. Shivers of trepidation coursed through my veins, but relentless determination guided me. As I sat in the waiting room, I looked around at the polished surfaces and pristine decor, places designed to promise justice, a power I was finally willing to claim. When I entered my lawyer's office, the air was charged with expectation. She listened carefully as I detailed my findings, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern to outright resolve as she grasped the full scope of James's deception. "You have a solid case, Claire. If we build this up properly, we can show he's not just untrustworthy, but actively trying to breach your financial security." "Exactly," I replied, a sly smile creeping over my lips. For the first time, I felt empowered, not as someone merely occupying a space in James's life, but as someone capable of wielding power in a way I had never done before. As we discussed my next steps, my heart pulsed with a fire I hadn't felt in years. We strategized how to approach the looming confrontation, making sure that every piece was coordinated. I needed to document everything meticulously, capturing all patterns of his financial misconduct, not for myself alone, but as a testament to reclaiming the agency I had lost. In the weeks that followed, I captured information with surgical precision. I observed James's routines, reminding myself to check in with Susan for moral support. I spoke with her frequently, brainstorming ways to weave our findings into an undeniable narrative that would expose him effectively. I gathered further evidence, including discrete bank statements and historical entries that would inevitably be more difficult for him to explain away once revealed. There were evenings spent treasuring those small victories where I uncovered even minor discrepancies. Each felt like a personal triumph. They served as small candles in the dark, softly illuminating the path toward liberation. As day bled into night, I began to feel a tremor of fear clawing at my resolve, a fear of what lay ahead. Doubts began to surface, whispering shadows of insecurities that echoed, reminding me of my previous compliance. But each time I felt myself wavering, I would replace that disquiet with the mantra that had carried me into this journey, embedding it into my core. I will not be diminished, I will rise. Then came the day when I felt ready. My plan took shape into something almost sacred. I created an outline for a confrontation, a dialogue that would compel James to hear the truths I had pieced together. No longer would he dismiss me as inconsequential. Rather, he would grapple with the evidence I had amassed, the culmination of every belittling remark, every careless financial maneuver turned into a coherent argument that reframed my experience of us. I arranged a time for the conversation, ensuring an environment that would keep my nerves at bay, yet illuminate the seriousness of my intent. James arrived home that evening, and the tension hung in the air like the scent of impending rain. In seconds, everything would change. As I prepared, monitoring the tremors of emotion swirling within me, I forced myself to focus on what was at stake. I held the documents close. I felt their thickness, their weight representing my journey. I was ready to unveil the truth, ready to drag the shadows into the light for James to witness. Claire Bennett was about to reclaim her narrative, and I braced myself for the battle I'd fought so hard to prepare for. As James stepped through the door, his casual demeanor felt like a cruel joke. The scent of his cologne hung heavily in the air, contrasting sharply with the storm brewing inside me. His cheerful greeting masked the gravity of what I was about to confront. "Hey, Claire, how was your day?" he asked, oblivious to the turmoil swirling within me. The push and pull of my emotions tightened like a coiled spring, reminding me that the time for silence had passed. "Actually, I'd like to talk about something important," I said, my voice steady. The unease in the air thickened as I gestured toward the coffee table, where I'd laid out all the evidence. "What's this about?" His tone shifted, a note of wariness creeping in as he followed my gaze. I took a deep breath and began, thrusting forward into the confrontation. "I know about the offshore accounts, the money transfers, and the lies you've been feeding me for years." Each word struck like lightning, the shock evident in his eyes. "Claire, you're being dramatic. This is absurd." His dismissive tone ignited a swell of anger, but I forced myself to stay calm, drawing on the confidence I had built through weeks of careful planning. "Absurd? No, James, this is the reality. You've manipulated our finances, made decisions behind my back, and treated me like I'm invisible in this marriage. I laid the documents out before him, the stark evidence of his betrayals. This isn't just about money. This is about trust, and you've shattered it. His brow furrowed as he glanced at the papers before quickly diverting his gaze, a mix of guilt and defensiveness flashing across his face. This means nothing. You should be grateful I've taken care of everything. Provided for me? I echoed, biting back the bitterness. You've suffocated me. You've kept me in the dark while transforming our lives into yours alone. Your affairs betray everything we built together. That stops tonight. I stepped closer, letting my words settle over him, dark and heavy. I refuse to live in a world where you dictate my reality. You think I won't fight back? I have the evidence, I have the support, and more importantly, I have myself. His initial confidence faltered, panic rippling beneath the surface. Claire, let's talk this through. No more talking, I interrupted, forcing my voice to remain firm. You've had your chance. This is about how I take back my life, how I rise from this betrayal. In that moment, I felt the balance of power shift dramatically. James's bravado slipped away, revealing a man confronted by the truth he desperately tried to hide. As anger carved deeper lines into his expression, I pressed on, embodying the courage I had struggled to find. Think about it, I countered, letting the weight of my revelations settle in the room. You've built a life of deceit, expecting me to simply look the other way, but I won't stand for it any longer. I'm not the obedient wife you thought I would always be. I noticed how he recoiled, how the bravado had ebbed, replaced by fear and realization. I can't believe you do this to me, he muttered, urgency coloring his tone. I've always provided for you. No, you've suffocated me, I retorted, my voice rising now. You've robbed me of my agency and my happiness. As the fight crescendoed, I felt the tremors of fear spiral within me, but I anchored myself with my mantra. I will not be diminished, I will rise. Each of James's desperate attempts to deflect responsibility only fueled my resolve. Claire, his voice faltered, palpable now with desperation. This isn't like you. This is exactly who I am, I shot back, my heart racing. A woman who is done being silenced and manipulated. You've lost the right to dictate my life. As I gathered my documents, preparing to walk away from the wreckage of our shared past, the confrontation had transformed into a pivotal moment, not only for me, but for everything I had endured. I could feel a surge of triumph rising within me. This was the turning point. James had unwittingly underestimated me, believing I would always remain submissive. But now, as I strode toward the door, I realized the true depth of my power. I had faced his betrayal and unearthed the truth, and in doing so, I had reclaimed not only my narrative, but my life. Remember this moment, I called over my shoulder. This is the day everything changes, not just for me, but for you as well. With that, I stepped out of the shadows we had long occupied together, filled with a renewed sense of strength and clarity. My fight was just beginning, but I was ready to navigate the battleground ahead. Claire Bennett would rise, and there was no turning back now. The days that followed our confrontation felt surreal, as if I'd stepped out of a foggy existence into sharp clarity. I had crossed an invisible threshold, moving from victimhood to empowerment. The house that once felt suffocating now echoed with the potential for new beginnings. As I returned to the comfort of my routine, I embraced the small, transformative rituals that anchored my new reality. I fluffed the cushions on the sofa, reorganized the spices in the kitchen, and tended to the garden that had spent years neglected, much like myself. Each task enacted like a healing ritual, helping to reclaim my sanctuary, a space that would no longer be marred by his presence. With each passing day, I brought more of the outside world into my life. I reached out to old friends I hadn't spoken to in ages, reconnecting with people who had provided warmth during better times. The simple act of laughter over coffee felt foreign yet refreshing, a melody I hadn't realized how desperately I needed. In those moments, I reflected on my journey. Each laugh was a testament to my resilience. Each shared story reminded me that I was not alone, that I'd always had support but had allowed myself to be shielded by fear. I felt lighter, stripped of the weight of deceit, unburdened by the shackles of my past life. Encouraged by this new sense of self, I sought guidance from a therapist, embracing vulnerability in a different light. I shared my experiences, the hurt, the betrayal, and the courage it took to confront James. Week after week, I peeled back layers of once hidden emotions, gradually rebuilding my sense of self-worth. "I see you've come a long way, Claire," my therapist remarked one afternoon, her gentle tone both validating and empowering. "It's not just about moving forward, but knowing your worth as you do so." Her words lingered, enveloping me in a warm glow of affirmation. I didn't just want to move on. I wanted to flourish, to emerge as someone not defined by my past, but rather by the strength it had forged within me. Boosted by this realization, I turned my focus back to my career, seeking opportunities that had long drifted to the periphery of my life. I dusted off my resume and began networking, allowing myself to dream again. The thrill of applying for jobs filled me with optimism, a sense of possibility I had forgotten existed. I eventually landed an interview for a project management position, a chance to utilize my skills and creativity in a fresh environment. Arriving at the office for my first interview felt exhilarating yet terrifying. I stepped into the brightly lit lobby with every intention of showing up as my best self. "Good morning, Claire," the hiring manager greeted with a warm smile. "We're excited to chat." As we conversed about my career and aspirations, I felt the familiar flutter of nerves, but underneath it lay an undeniable resolve. This was me reclaiming my narrative, reminding myself of my capabilities and past successes. Each answer I gave refined my confidence, a transformation born out of knowing my worth. When I received the job offer a week later, I felt a wave wash over me. It was not merely a professional opportunity, but a stepping stone to redefining who I was. The exhilaration bounced around the walls of my heart as I jumped at the chance to accept, thrilled by the new horizons unfolding. As I settled into my role, I embraced the energy of the workplace. My colleagues' laughter intermingled with tasks. Each conversation felt electric, each project an opportunity for collaboration. The work invigorated me, sparking a fire that matched the burgeoning sense of self-worth within. In the quiet moments, those precious, fleeting instances before bed, I'd reflect on the journey I had undertaken. The long path through pain had forged an unbreakable spirit within me. I was no longer Claire Bennett, the woman trapped by betrayal. I was Claire Bennett, a warrior navigating her life with purpose. Then, one evening, I found myself flipping through old photographs, nostalgic and bittersweet memories adorning the pages. I came across a picture of James and me, laughing obliviously to our shared fate. The sight no longer conjured anger or sadness, but rather a reflective warmth that came from understanding that I had moved on. I could finally acknowledge the love we once shared without losing myself in its echoes. As I closed the album, I looked around my home, my sanctuary. I had transformed it into a vibrant space of hope, adorned with flowers blossoming in my garden and shelves filled with books of inspiration. I smiled at the reflection in the mirror, now carrying strength where once there had been only doubt. From the ashes of betrayal, I had risen anew, determined to cultivate a life filled with joy, connection, and authenticity. Every choice I made reinforced my resolve, a deliberate action to reject the past and create a future I could embrace, not just for me, but for the woman I had become. As I stood there, looking out over the blooming garden, I softly repeated my mantra: I will not be diminished, I will rise. In that moment of stillness, I realized I had done just that. Everything had changed, and I was ready to embrace it all. The sun rose warmly over my garden, each ray soaking into the lush blooms as I stepped outside, relishing the multitude of colors greeting me. It felt like a fresh start each morning, reminding me that every day was an opportunity to cultivate growth, not just in the garden, but in my own life. The scents of the flowers intertwined with the earthy aroma of the soil, grounding me and energizing my spirit. Back at work, I embraced my new role with vigor, welcoming the camaraderie with my colleagues. Our shared laughs over coffee and collaborative brainstorming sessions filled me with joy as I tasted the sweetness of new friendships. For the first time in years, I was not just Claire Bennett in the background. I was an integral part of something dynamic and alive. During a team meeting one afternoon, my manager announced a project requiring volunteers to lead. I felt a thrill shoot through me. I'd love to lead this project, I blurted out, the words flowing from a newfound confidence that seemed foreign yet exhilarating. That's great to hear, Claire, my manager replied, a note of encouragement in her voice. Let's discuss your ideas after the meeting. As I left the room, a wave of energy surged through me. This was my chance to step confidently into my potential, to be the architect of my own destiny. The world felt vibrantly alive, and I was determined to explore its depths. However, whispers of my past still lingered like shadows around me. I occasionally heard James's name mentioned among our mutual friends, a reminder of the life I'd fought to move away from. Each mention twisted my stomach momentarily, but with our confrontation behind me, I felt an unexpected indifference. One bright Saturday, while I was tending to my flowers, I spotted a familiar car pulling into my driveway. My heart surged. It was James. He emerged hesitantly, dressed casually, with an air of uncertainty. "Claire?" he started, voice tentative. "What do you want, James?" I asked, arms crossed, feeling the protective distance I had established around myself. "I wanted to talk. I know I messed up," he said, the sincerity in his voice unmistakable. "Did you come to apologize or to plead? I'm not interested in more empty words," I replied, my tone steady, reflecting the strength I had cultivated. Taking a deep breath, he offered, "I've been selfish, and I realize how much I've lost. I thought I could handle everything without ever truly opening up to you." His words stirred something within me, yet I held my ground. You had your chance. This isn't just about you. This is about my life and the choices you made that impacted us. I know, he admitted, defeat evident in his eyes. I've started attending therapy. I'm trying to understand my mistakes. That's great, I responded, though my heart remained cautious. But I've done my own work and I'm not the woman you left behind. You can't expect me to forget the past. I don't expect forgiveness right away, he replied. I just needed you to know how truly sorry I am. I hope one day we can rebuild a friendship. I paused, contemplating the weight of his request. Maybe, in time, I would find the strength to acknowledge the past without the pain it once held. But I wasn't ready today. I'll think about it, I finally said, watching him nod apologetically. As he walked away, I felt an unexpected release. I had remained firm in my identity, asserting that my worth was no longer defined by his actions. The weeks that followed burst with vibrancy. Every successful project and positive interaction at work fueled my ambition, reminding me of my capabilities and worth. I poured myself into my new role, thriving in the excitement of collaborative tasks and creative brainstorming. Each day was a celebration of authenticity and purpose. Determined to embrace every piece of life, I explored activities I had long neglected. From painting to hiking, I filled my evenings with pursuits that invigorated my spirit. Surrounded by freedom, each experience became a brushstroke in the canvas of my revitalized self. One Saturday, I visited the local farmers market, enthralled by the colorful displays. Insights from an artist's stall captivated my attention. I'd love to have a piece of your work, I said, happily moving through the vibrant array of colors. As I purchased a canvas, I felt the warmth of creativity blossoming within me, an echo of my resilient spirit. I took it home and hung it in my garden, letting it symbolize my growth. Each day I was reminded of my mantra, I will not be diminished. I will rise. And rise I did, constructing a life defined by my choices and rebirth. The remnants of my shared past with James faded into the background as brighter possibilities bloomed ahead. Embracing my new life, I looked toward the sunny horizon, an uninterrupted expanse filled with promise and endless potential. This was just the beginning, and with every step forward, I felt empowered and alive. Autumn arrived with a gentle shift in the air, painting the leaves in hues of gold and crimson. A seasonal transformation mirrored my own, as the vibrant colors of my life began to deepen with experiences and renewal. The crispness of fall invigorated me, pulling me outside more often to walk through parks adorned with nature's artistry. Each step felt like a celebration of the newfound freedom I had cultivated. At work, my enthusiasm translated into productivity. The project I had led blossomed into a success beyond expectations. Our team celebrated our accomplishments at a local cafe, laughter swirling around us like the aroma of fresh brewed coffee. As I listened to my colleagues share stories about their lives, I realized how much I enjoyed the camaraderie we'd built. I felt a sense of belonging, something I had craved for so long. Afterward, feeling empowered and connected, I decided to host a small gathering at my house. It was a chance to bring together friends and colleagues to share my home, my journey, to weave new fabric into the tapestry of my life. As I prepared for the evening, I chose my favorite recipes, pouring love into each dish, the scent of rosemary and garlic saturating the air, fueling my anticipation. As guests started to arrive, a wave of excitement washed over me. They wandered through my garden, marveling at the flowers, each bloom a symbol of my resilience. I watched their faces light up, the garden, like my spirit, filled with unexpected splendor. "Claire, this place is beautiful," one colleague exclaimed, taking in the vibrant colors. "Thank you. I've poured a lot of love into it," I replied, a soft smile spreading across my face. As we gathered around the table, sharing food and laughter, I felt the warmth of their presence wrap around me like a cherished blanket. Each person contributed stories and shared moments of vulnerability, creating an inviting atmosphere. I could feel the connections strengthening. The bonds that had grown fragile over the years had reasserted themselves in my life. When the laughter subsided, I couldn't help but reflect on my journey. "I'm grateful to have you all here," I said, emotion catching in my throat. It's incredible how much our lives can change in such a short time. A hush fell over the room. My colleagues nodded in agreement, their smiles wide and supportive. After dessert, as we settled into comfortable conversation, I transformed over the evening. I was no longer a woman burdened by a past betrayal. I was Claire, a warrior who had risen, radiant and unapologetic. In the days that followed, empowered by the gathering, I made more intentional choices. I began volunteering at a local community center, using my skills to teach art classes to kids. It excited me to guide young talents, igniting their creativity while nurturing their confidence. Each session brought laughter and inspiration. Their youthful innocence reminded me of the joys of life, how each moment held its own beauty. One Sunday evening, while flipping through sketches the kids had created, I found myself lost in thought, realizing how far I had come. My life was filled with vibrancy, a tapestry woven from love, purpose, and healing. I savored the delightful chaos, thrilled that I could share my gifts and encourage growth in others. Then, one chilly afternoon, while at a cafe catching up on some work, I noticed a familiar face walking in. It was James, his presence unearthing a mix of emotions that I hadn't fully resolved. I felt my heart race. I had mostly moved on, yet seeing him forced a moment of reckoning. Our eyes locked for an instant, and he approached, hesitant but sincere. "Claire," he greeted, a cautious smile playing on his lips. "James," I replied, holding my ground. I felt the resolve I had nurtured stand firm. This was my space, and I was no longer afraid. "I've been thinking about what we talked about last time. I truly want to start fresh, if you're open to it," he said, genuine hope flickering in his eyes. I considered his words. "While I appreciate your intentions, I have carved out a beautiful life, and I'm not sure friendship fits into it right now." He nodded, visibly understanding, yet disappointed. "I get it. I just hope you'll know that I truly regret the past and want to be a better person." "I hope you find that path," I said, warmth edging into my tone. "I really do." As he walked away, I felt a heaviness lift. I realized that holding on to anger or resentment wasn't my path anymore. I had transformed beyond the hurt. I could acknowledge my past while moving forward. As autumn continued to unfold, I cherished the memories I was creating. I hosted more gatherings, offered my time to the community, and immersed myself in creativity. Each step carried me deeper into the embrace of my present. I laughed, I loved, and I grew, filled with an understanding that the life I was forging was mine alone. My mantra, "I will not be diminished, I will rise," echoed in my heart as I stepped into a new day, vibrant and hopeful, ready to embrace whatever the future held. As winter approached, I found myself enveloped in a cozy cocoon of activity and reflection. The days grew shorter, but the warmth within me flourished. It was as if the season itself encouraged me to embrace the beauty of stillness, an invitation to slow down and savor each tranquil moment. I decorated my home for the holidays, hanging twinkling lights that danced in the evening glow, casting a warm embrace throughout my living space. Each ornament on the tree was a token of my journey, a reminder of the growth and resilience I had cultivated. For the first time, I felt a sense of ownership over my joy, no longer seeking validation from anyone else. During this season, I began organizing a charity art auction to benefit local children's programs. My heart swelled with excitement at the prospect of channeling my passions into a cause greater than myself. I reached out to local artists, collaborated with community centers, and even organized displays of the children's art from the classes I had taught. The entire process felt transformative. I lost myself in moments of creation, weaving together ideas and dreams. I could feel my optimism spilling over into every corner of my life. With each passing day, the anticipation of the event grew. New friendships blossomed through shared visions, and laughter echoed as we worked toward a common goal. I found solace in the collaborative spirit of it all. Yet, amidst this burgeoning joy, quiet memories of James occasionally floated to the surface. He remained a whisper in the back of my mind, a reminder of how far I had come, but also of the shadows that danced with unfulfilled potential. While I had not completely severed my ties with the past, I learned to treat those memories with compassion. I didn't push them away. I acknowledged them and let them drift gently in the breeze of thought. As the night of the charity auction drew near, my anticipation transformed into a nervous energy. I meticulously arranged flowers, hung artwork, and prepared the space, all while breathing in the affirmative words of my mantra: I will not be diminished, I will rise. These words were etched into my heart, becoming an affirmation of my journey toward a new dawn. Finally, the evening arrived. I stood back for a moment, surveying the transformation the room had undergone. It glimmered with life, warm tones lighting up the faces of newcomers and returning friends alike. I watched as people gathered, connecting through their shared appreciation for creativity and community. The air buzzed with excitement, everything feeling perfectly in place. As the evening unfolded, I mingled with guests, sharing stories and laughter that surged like a river, flowing freely amid a sea of warmth and positivity. Several pieces sold quickly, and the majority of the night's proceeds flowed into funding art programs for underprivileged children. Each sale felt like a small victory, a testament to the power of purpose intertwined with passion. But as I stood there, enveloped in the radiant energy of the event, I was struck by something deeper. I witnessed how our collective efforts birthed an opportunity for these children to express themselves through creativity, a chance they might not have otherwise. This realization filled me with gratitude and purpose, assuring me that my journey was not solely about personal growth, but about how my journey could positively influence the world around me. In the midst of it all, I spotted a familiar face once again. James appeared in the doorway, uncertain yet resolute. My heart raced, but not from fear. Instead, a calm awareness washed over me. He approached with cautious steps, a genuine smile illuminating his face, seeking the warmth that enveloped the event. "Wow, Claire, this is incredible," he said, genuine admiration threading his voice. "Thank you," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "I wanted this to be meaningful." "I can see that," he nodded, looking around as if drinking in the atmosphere. After a moment of silence, he added, "You've really built something beautiful here." "There's still room for improvement," I said, the smile on my face tight, but I could sense a shift in our dynamic. He took a deep breath, visibly gathering his thoughts. "I know I can't change the past. I only wish to understand how I can support the person you've become." For a moment, I was taken aback. Here was a man who had once cast a shadow over my life, now standing before me, seeking connection. But I was different now, whole. "I appreciate your words, James, truly, but I can't create space for you in the way you might want." He seemed to appreciate my honesty, nodding as if the truth grounded him. "Just being here means a lot. I'm proud of the person you've become, Claire." His acknowledgement resonated within me, not for his validation, but for my own growth. "Thank you. I'm moving forward, and I hope you find your path as well." As we shared a quiet moment of mutual respect, I felt liberated, realizing that the burden of years past no longer tethered me. I was free to rise, embracing this new dawn without the weight of regret or resentment. The event continued into the night, filled with laughter and celebration. As I reveled in the joy around me, I recognized the significance of the journey I had undertaken. It was about connection, creativity, and understanding, all of which I would carry with me into whatever awaited in the future. As the evening came to a close, I watched with a swelling heart as the blended energy of the room buzzed on. Each vibrant soul present symbolized a new chapter, a new beginning. I stepped outside for a breath of fresh air, looking up at the starry sky above. In that moment of stillness, I felt alive and empowered. "I will not be diminished. I will rise," I whispered, letting the words fill my spirit with renewed strength, ready to face whatever the world had in store for me.